What's up, Norberg Nation? How's it going? Sorry I didn't post last week. I kind of got out of the weekly schedule of posting just because I was so busy racing. For the past 4 weeks, I've been traveling just race to race, and basically I just kind of got caught up with all of the stuff I was doing at the racetrack and just didn't have time to post a video. Normally the Monday after a race, I can kind of throw together a video of just all the racing that I've been doing. But when I got home, I was exhausted just from being gone for the past couple weeks and didn't really have the energy or the time to look through, camera rolls and just try and figure out a video to post. So I decided to take a week off, but we are back today with another video. Another huge announcement is the Norberg Nation merch is finally out. So make sure to check it out on my Instagram, on my Facebook, and I'll have a link down below so you guys can go get yourself some Norberg Nation merch. I want you guys to know that when you like and subscribe and comment and purchase the Norberg Nation merch, it really helps me out with this channel. This is something that I do in my free time, so it really helps me out knowing that you guys are supporting this channel and supporting me, providing this content for you guys. So go check out the merch. We have t-shirts, we have long sleeve shirts, and as well we have a cool hoodie for you guys. So make sure you check it out and get you some Norberg Nation merch. So now let's get started with the video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than most because it is going to be a weekend review. There's a lot of stuff that goes on during a race, but there's even more stuff that goes on during a race weekend. And so I kind of want to go through the thoughts and the thought process I had throughout the entire race weekend. This also was a championship weekend, so that also adds a little bit of stress to the race weekend, more than normal. So I just want to go through, a lot of the thoughts I was having race to race, and just a lot of the thoughts that I was having in the races as well. I'm still going to review some of the races from the weekend, just in a little bit shorter segments, and then go over, what I was feeling during the race and how I approached the next race. So with that being said, let's get started with the video. So for those of you who don't know about the SKUSA Pro Tour, it's a 6-race series broken up into 3 different race weekends. You get points for your pre-final and your final, but only your best 5 races of the 6 races count towards your championship total. Once all races are complete, the person with the most points out of the 5 or 6 races is your champion. So going into this weekend, if you hear me say a drop race, that is the one race that I am dropping out of my championship points. That is a race that I'm thinking is going to be my lowest score, and that's the one I want to keep as my lowest score. So that's just a little bit of information on the series so that there's a little less confusion when I'm talking about the championship standing. So going into the weekend, I was 3rd in the championship, but not far behind my other 2 teammates, Big Steiner and Hannah Greenemeyer. With a drop race already calculated, we were all pretty similar in points, only a few points between each other, so it really mattered who had the best 2 races for the end of the championship. So during practice, I was relatively fast. I wasn't the fastest driver under the tent. That would go to Nate Cicero, who was just really quick all week. But my problem that I had all through practice was that I like to practice alone, and I think that really hurt me throughout the week. Something that I've always lived by is I watched Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson talking, while they're at Talladega, and somebody asked Chad Knaus in an interview, he said, why does Jimmy practice alone in Talladega? It's all about speed and about getting that draft. And he said that if you're fast alone, you can be fast in a pack. And so I've always kind of lived by that mentality. If I go out alone and practice alone, I can be fast leading the pack, and I can be fast on my own at the front of the field. That's something I've always liked to do, but it really hurt me this week because I really wasn't the fastest driver. It was Nate Cicero who was under our tent. I kind of looked past the fact that I could get behind him and practice with him and chose to stay by myself a lot of the time and just really work on my own craft. And that really hurt me. In the last practice session before Saturday's race day, I went out behind Nate and I figured out a lot of the stuff that I was doing wrong, but I definitely didn't feel that confident going into the race weekend because I didn't have the speed that I normally did. I was still faster than my championship rivals at the time, so that gave me a little bit of confidence, but I definitely wasn't sure about my race because the track that we're at, there's so much with the draft and there's so much that brings you in with the draft. I knew that if I didn't have the pace to stay with that front pack, I was definitely going to be eaten up and possibly lose the championship over it. But after practice, I figured out a little bit and was ready for Saturday's race day. In the beginning of the day, we have morning warm-up. That went decently. And then I qualified 4th for the race, which really wasn't that bad. But the problem was Hannah Greenemeyer, who again is a championship rival, she qualified 1st. And the way the championship is if you get pole position in qualifying or fastest lap in the final of the race, you get a bonus 10 points. And so considering that our championship was super close already, for her to get that extra 10 points really hurt me going into that first race, and I was definitely really eager to go get some points back in this next race. So we're starting the race on the outside, just trying to stay clean going into turn 1. I'd lose a little bit, and I was starting to fall back to 5th. See, I just get run off the track there, and then we enter the corner and crash immediately. But I did feel like I gave the driver on the inside quite a bit of space going into the corner, and you can see once we get to the center of the corner, I'll pause it right there. The driver just goes straight into me, and we crash off, and that just kind of ruined the first race. Because you do get points for the championship, I did stay out, and I continued. I ended up going from like 32nd down to 20th. There's a few crashes here and there where I was able to pick up a few points, but I ended up losing 40 points to my championship rivals, which was really frustrating considering that it was so close already, and now I'm just setting myself back and back. I was trying to stay optimistic, but really I was really frustrated with myself because of my crash in Utah. That's a race you guys got to see. That was a part of this championship, and because of that crash, that was a mistake on my end. I used my drop race earlier in the championship instead of carrying it to the last round when I really needed it. You can't make mistakes in racing, especially in a championship, because honestly, this crash I don't feel was my fault, and that's just racing. There's a lot of times where you do get taken out and it's not your fault, and you couldn't really do much to avoid it. I could have backed out of the pass a little bit, but there's times you can't blame yourself for the accident totally, and you just get caught up in somebody else's mistake. But like I said, what really frustrated me was a mistake I made back in Utah. That's what really cost me the championship. Because of my mistake in Utah, I ended up getting a very bad points weekend that weekend. I was super fast, and I missed out on a huge opportunity, and now I'm on my heels already going into this weekend, and one mistake from another driver is basically costing me almost a championship at this point. And so knowing that, I knew that I had a lot of points I had to make up. First of all, because I'm starting so far in the back, and to make up the points that I just lost going into this race. But the way this racetrack is, there's a lot of time that you can make up in the draft and coming through the field. I've had races here where I've picked up 25, 30 carts. So starting 20th, this is a possibility. I could possibly catch up to the leader and just salvage a points day and still be able to have a good day and come away with some points that keep me in the hunt for the championship. And so to start this race, we're starting really far in the back. 20th is not great to start on the outside. Going into turn 1, you just see all the drivers on the outside bottle up there, and there I am on top of the driver in front of me, and I can't turn the steering wheel, and I'm in the grass. So basically what happened is, you can see as we're coming out of the corner, a driver 4 or 5 carts in front of me gets bottled up and checks up, and basically an accordion effect just happens, and all the drivers behind him just pile into him, and by the time I start accelerating to get out of the corner, the drivers in front of me are accelerating, and then they just come to a complete stop. And that's what you see. I come out of the corner, and then all of a sudden, everybody in front of me stopped, and I'm in the air, and I'm out of the race. My nose cone ended up getting lodged inside of the front right tire, and that basically made me not able to turn to the left, and that's why I drive straight into the grass. I had to get out of the cart to remove the nose cone from the tire. And yeah, you're basically not allowed to touch your nose cone with the new drop-down system or anything once you get out of the go-kart or once you start the race. And so basically my race was over at that point, and my championship was done. So at that point, I had basically conceded first and possibly second place. I didn't know how the next day was going to go, but first and second were almost untouchable at this point. And that was basically from all the crashing I did on that day. Again, this was super frustrating for me, considering that I had a shot at this championship, and it's all gone away because of mistakes that I don't feel were my fault. But again, the reason I was the most frustrated is because this could have been avoided. I could have dropped this race and had a good day the next day and made up for everything if I didn't make that mistake in Utah. And so that's something you have to remember when you're racing for a championship, is it's better in situations not to be stupid and not to be an idiot, not to get caught up in the moment and cause a big accident early in the championship, because that can bite you later in the end. You might have a great run at the latter half of the season, but one mistake from another driver is it. And that's racing. I mean, you can't count for every mistake for every driver in a championship, and that's the unfortunate part of this. And that's the unfortunate part of this weekend, is that I got caught up in somebody else's mistake, and it ended my championship. yeah, very frustrating. But going into Sunday, fresh day, there's nothing really for me to worry about because I don't have any championship implications right now. The only thing I have to worry about is getting out of my two teammates' way if they're fighting for a championship. I don't want to be involved in that, but I can go out there and just do as good as I have to. There's nothing on it for me. I had third, in a decent position, but really, once you're out of the contention for the win, I didn't really, consider third as like a good consolation prize. I really wanted the championship, but I wanted to go out there the next day and prove that I can still compete and I was a worthy competitor in this championship. I just wanted to prove to myself that if it weren't for these crashes, I could have done well in this championship. And so that's what I wanted to do going into the next day. So again, Sunday's warm-up went really well. We were up in the top 5. And then again in qualifying, I ended up qualifying 4th again. But something happened where there was a penalty with the guy in 3rd, which promoted me to 3rd. So it was my teammate Nate Cicero in 1st, my teammate Hannah Greenmeyer in 2nd, and then me in 3rd position starting the pre-final. So starting this race, honestly, my biggest goal was just to not crash. I'd crashed so much already. I was taking it really cautiously early on. You see there I give Hannah a lot of space on the outside. She slots into the 2nd position, and I just kind of chill there for a little bit. I'd crashed so much, I really didn't want to do that again. And honestly, I think it ended up hurting me a little bit because I took it so easy early on in the race. My tires really never came up to temperature. And so you'll see early on, these guys have a little bit of an advantage compared to me. And you see off of that corner there, I didn't get the best run. And so sizing up my teammates, it's always difficult because we're all on the same equipment. So if there's a gear change between one of us, that one person is going to be stronger in that area. And we all ran a little bit different setup. And so you can see that, we all have to figure out where we're stronger than the other person. And just kind of play to that point. Again, early on, I'm taking it easy. You can see in the reverse camera, I'm looking back and I'm seeing that we have a decent gap, so I don't want to race super hard, super early. And I'm not really closing on these guys. I hope they don't push too much because they will pull away from me, unfortunately. But I'm just going to try and stay with them and make it a race somewhat, that I can stay with it. I don't feel super confident at this point, but I'm going to keep pushing and try and get some heat in the tires so I can stay with them super strong in 1, 2, 3. And so that's something that I'm looking at there and going, wow, I've got a lot of speed, down into turn 4 here, this bowl corner. Maybe I could pull out a pass there or down this back straightaway. And again, I'm looking at the way the draft is looking, and at the very end of it, I'm closing on these guys. And so maybe that'll be an opportunity later on, but not necessarily. Hannah makes a little mistake there. I go to the inside. I didn't want to force that. She's in a championship. I'm trying to be nice. And obviously, I've crashed so much already. I'm just trying to take it easy. I was just trying to take advantage of a mistake, but she defended enough, and I didn't get a good enough run that, she was able to hold on to that position. And we kind of go around like this for a little bit until we catch Nate Cicero again. So they kind of battle a lot. Hannah passed Nate, and Nate passed her right back, and I really was in a position where I couldn't do anything whenever either one of them would pass. So I'm just waiting for a mistake, and there Hannah makes that same mistake again. She knows I'm going to go for it a little bit more aggressively this time because I'm expecting her to come down again. So I'm going to try and get in front of her and try and separate these two because, even when they're racing each other, I really didn't have much for them. I would always kind of get to the center of the corner and then lose center off, and that was always frustrating and trying to figure out where I'm stronger and where they're stronger. And so I figured the best bet for me was to get in front of Hannah or get in front of one of them and try and have them push me by the other driver. And you see there I get a nice draft up to Nate. Leading the race was difficult at this racetrack because there was a big headwind coming against you, going up that hill there. And so yeah, it made this back straightaway a little bit harder to pass on because we have a tailwind, but going up the other way, it was definitely, you're kind of sitting duck at the end of the straightaway. I'm still strong in 1, 2, 3. You can see their tire pressures coming in, so I'm less, as strong as they were early on. Nate defends there, has a little bit of a slide, and so I'm looking at this and going, maybe I can pull it out in time. I was faster than him at the end of the straightaway, and so he backs out there, and I'm able to get to the lead. And obviously the one thing I always like to do when I get out is trying to make a few good corners after I make that pass so I don't have to block. Luckily, I do have teammates behind me, so I didn't really feel like I needed to block super hard. And so go like this for a few more laps until I get caught by Hannah. So Nate pushes me for a few laps, but eventually Hannah gets in front of him, and now she's looking to get by me. I knew it was coming because every time I come out of that corner, one of them would peek their nose in. Nate tries to go with her there. I kind of close the door, but you can see there's drivers stacking up behind me, and I saw that when I look back. So again, she makes that mistake off of that corner, and I'm going right back to the lead. I'm really happy with the reverse camera because you can kind of see what I look back and see. And so when I was going up the hill, when Hannah passed me, I looked back and saw Nate and saw a lot more guys. And with my speed early on, I didn't feel like I was super strong following guys just because of the way the arrow push was working, and my car didn't feel great behind people. It felt better out front, and so I figured my best bet is to control this race from either the first or second position and don't go any further than that. And I knew when Hannah passed me, it's definitely going to put me in a lot of pressure from the drivers behind, so I'm going back to the lead, and I'm going to try and stretch this out. I end up pulling a bit of a gap on these guys, surprisingly. I think they start racing a little bit behind me, and that allows me to stretch out enough of some breathing room that I didn't have to race super hard for the rest of the race. You can see Hannah's still on my bumper there, and a little further back, but again, this little section right here, they get a lot of speed, and possibly, you know, they start racing behind me. I look back a little bit, but I can't see everything. She pushes me, she gives me a signal to keep going, and that was nice. That happens a lot at this racetrack where the drivers would rather, you know, work together and stretch it out. And that was something we saw as we kind of went through the weekend. You know, you'd see that, you know, you're strong in a certain area, so let's push and try and get away. And in that bottom area, you know, that tight stuff, I definitely had a little bit of an advantage early on. I didn't feel like I did, but there I definitely have an advantage, and that's allowing me to stretch out enough of a gap so that when I got to the straightaway, I'd have some breathing room, that I wouldn't be too bad of a tow, you know, down the back straightaway, and they just pass me back. So a few laps go by, and I have a pretty decent lead here going into the last lap, and I look back, you know, the lap before and saw this, and so I was like, okay, I'll just take it easy this last lap, no real mistakes, driving through this corner, you know, still going pretty hard, but I'm just going to try and save my tires. But what I want to point out is this monster lap that Nate Cicero has behind me. You can already see he's closed that huge gap by like half already, and so that was something that I wasn't really looking at. You know, normally I'm pretty aware of the drivers behind me, but I look back on the front straightaway and I had a huge gap, so I didn't even think I needed to block. I'm still pushing, but that's more just to keep my head in the game. I wasn't really pushing just to push and eat the tires up. This is the last lap, and I think right about here I look back and realize, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's way closer than I thought he was. And so that's going to make it interesting going down this back straightaway. Again, with this headwind, you know, what am I going to do to the line? Because he's probably going to beat me. And you see there, he peaks. I defend a little bit, and he gets a good run out of this corner. And then it's a drag race to the finish. I block right here, and come up a little bit, which, you know, could go either way on if that's excessive blocking or not. Beat him to the line, and that was the closest race I had all weekend. It was a really good race. It was super fun, but that was a monster lap from him. And so you got to pay attention. Don't give up. You know, even if you have a lead, you know, you shouldn't give up, because they can always close that gap and make it a real fight to the end. And so now we head into the final starting pole. I know that this is probably going to be a lot more interesting of a race than the previous one, because my teammates were, you know, close to me, and the drivers behind me were also really fast. And I felt like I was probably the slowest in the top 5. And so I was really just going to try and hold on to this and stay out front as much as I could. And so, yeah, not super confident going into this race. I'm just wanting to keep my head clear and stay out front as much as I can. I like to stay in like the top 2 positions, because I feel like that's the best area to control a race. You have the most opportunities in those first 2 positions. But see if I can get a good start here and get a good clean turn 1. And see if I can make something happen with this race. So I get a nice late acceleration out the gate. I ended up getting a good turn 1 because I didn't really have to block or defend anything going into turn 2. A little defensive into turn 3 just in case. But I come out of turn 3 and they're on my bumper. I can feel them already. I thought I defended going into this corner, but the driver went through the dirt, made a little contact there, and that's why he washed wide really early. So I got back by and got into the lead. And basically, you can watch the Kart Chaser video. They show a lot better of what's going on behind me. I look back right there. I had a huge gap coming out of the corner. And so I just wanted to keep my head down and push, because you never get awarded that at a track like this where you can break the draft after 4 corners. And so I was out of the tow range, and so I knew that they'd either have to work together to catch me, which the way the racing was going, I wasn't sure if they'd be able to work together and stop fighting, or I could just kind of outpace them. The unfortunate part is I knew from Nate's driving the day before, because he kind of checked out on the field, that a good pace to be at was a 1:16.6 or 5, and if you could consistently do those times, that's enough that you would be able to stay out of the tow and be able to gap yourself from the rest of the field. I pushed really hard, and I think the best time I could only get down to was a 1:16.8, which wasn't enough. I could definitely see the drivers behind me. They were closing and closing and closing. I didn't have my reverse camera on for this, so it's really unfortunate because you couldn't see them, inch and inch towards you. But the biggest deal was to try and push and make some time up in the middle of this race. I did a really good job at keeping the lead and staying out front, but the mistake I made was I ended up cooking the rear tires a lot because I was driving so hard early on in the race, and I was pushing the go-kart just to try and get that lead. And so the drivers caught back pretty fast at the end of the race, but I knew if I could get to 2 laps to go, there wouldn't be anything left for them. And if I could hold them to like a second and a half, with 2 laps to go, they're definitely going to start fighting for that second position and not focus on me, because basically I'd be unreachable at that point. So basically what I started doing is when I got to like 7-8 laps to go, I'm counting this on my dash, I basically slowed up like 3/10, and that allowed me to cool the tires back down. And with 2 to go, I pushed really hard and did a 1:16.9, which is almost as fast as my fastest lap, and that allowed me to stay out front and keep the kart at a good pace and keep the tires underneath me enough that I was able to, stretch the gap enough that I was able to win the race. It's definitely a frustrating way to end the championship, especially when, your mistake earlier in the series is what cost you that, and you got to sit with that for forever, and you knew that it was going to hurt you down the road, and it ended up hurting you, and so it just stings that much more. But again, super happy for my team, super happy for my teammate Hannah Greenemeyer on the amazing championship that she won. She definitely had the best 5 of 6 races. She had the best 6 races, honestly. And so props to her, props to Big Steiner for getting second in the championship. And again, props to Nate Cicero for winning that race on Saturday. I mean, he dominated everybody. So I'm super proud of the work that my team's doing and the amount of effort we're putting into this. And just to see the results, it's super great for us. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to tune in for the next one. I'm sorry it was so long, but I wanted to give you guys a good insight on what I'm feeling through a whole championship weekend, and this is the only way to do it, to make a long video. Again, make sure to go get you some Nürburgring Nation merch. Make sure to like and subscribe to the video. It's super helpful knowing you guys are supporting this channel and wanting it to grow and allowing me to have the platform just to support you guys and give out this content. Comment down below any questions you guys have about a championship weekend and any questions you guys have to handling the pressure, going into a championship weekend. Make sure to follow me on my Instagram and on my Facebook. That's where you get any updates on my race and career. And that's also where you're going to be able to find the link to my merch store. So make sure to check those out and to follow those. Again, thank you guys so much for watching the video, and I'll catch you at the next one.